The boy was very quiet by nature. He was not the kind of child who spoke loudly in class or tried to grab attention. Most of the time, he sat in the last row of the classroom, doing his work carefully and listening to what the teacher said. He was gentle, kind, and respectful. Every morning before leaving for school, his father packed a small lunch for him with love. It was never anything fancy, just simple food, a sandwich, maybe an apple, and sometimes a homemade snack. For the boy, it was not only food. It was a piece of home he carried with him to school. At first, everything seemed normal. He used to open his lunchbox during the break, sit by himself, and quietly eat while watching other children laugh, play, and share food with their friends. But then something strange started happening. His teacher, the very person who was supposed to guide and protect him, began taking away his lunch. It was not once or twice. It became a habit. The teacher would walk around the classroom at break time and notice the boy's small lunchbox. Sometimes the teacher would say, "Food is not allowed here. Give it to me." Other times the teacher would claim, "You did not complete your homework properly, so you don't deserve to eat today." Even when the boy had done nothing wrong, the teacher still found excuses. The boy would quietly hand over his food, lowering his eyes, afraid to say a word. Day after day, this routine continued. The teacher would take his lunch, and the boy would remain hungry for the rest of the school hours. His classmates noticed, but were too afraid to speak up. Some whispered among themselves, wondering why the teacher was so harsh toward him, but the boy never complained. He thought if he stayed quiet, maybe the teacher would stop. Unfortunately, it did not stop. The boy's small stomach would growl loudly during the last 2 periods of class. He tried to hide it by pressing his hand against his belly or drinking water, but it was not enough. Hunger made him feel weak. He found it hard to focus on the lessons, and sometimes his head felt heavy. He wanted to cry, but he held back his tears because he didn't want anyone to see him as weak. When the school bell finally rang, he would rush back home. His father always greeted him warmly, asking, "How was school today?" The boy would force a smile and say, "It was fine." Then his father would place food on the table and the boy would eat quietly, almost as if he had not eaten all day. His father noticed that his son was always hungrier than usual when he came home, but at first, he thought maybe it was because children played and studied a lot in school. As the weeks passed, the boy's face began to lose its glow. His cheeks were not as full and his eyes looked tired. He often felt dizzy in the mornings and did not have the same energy as before. His classmates started noticing his sadness too. They sometimes asked him, "Why don't you eat your lunch? We never see you with food." The boy avoided answering. Deep inside, he wanted to tell someone, but he was scared. He worried that if he told his father, the teacher might punish him even more. At home, the father observed small changes in his son's behavior. The boy would go to bed early, saying he was tired. He no longer talked much about school. The father began to wonder if something was wrong. He started watching his son more carefully. One evening, as he packed the lunch for the next day, he noticed his son staring at the food with a strange look. It was a mix of longing and sadness. The father gently asked, "Do you enjoy the lunch I pack for you?" The boy nodded quickly but didn't say anything else. The father felt uneasy. He thought, if he eats this lunch every day, why does he look so weak when he returns? He decided to observe even more closely. The next day, when the boy returned from school, the father casually asked, "What did you eat today?" The boy hesitated for a moment, then said softly, "It was good." But his eyes gave away a hidden pain. The father did not push him, but inside he felt a strong worry rising. One afternoon, the father noticed his son coming home earlier than usual. His steps were slow and he looked down at the ground as if carrying a heavy burden. The father waited until his son sat at the table. Then he asked again in a gentle voice, "My dear, are you eating your lunch in school?" The boy looked at him, then looked away. For a long moment, he stayed silent. Finally, his small voice broke the silence. "Papa, my lunch. It gets taken away." The father's heart sank. He leaned forward and asked softly, "Who takes it away?" The boy's eyes filled with tears. He whispered, "The teacher." At first, the father thought he had misheard. A teacher? The very person who should protect and care for his son? His hands tightened into fists under the table. But he kept his face calm so as not to scare his son. The boy explained everything slowly, how almost every day the teacher found a reason to take away his lunch, how he stayed hungry, and how he was afraid to complain because he didn't want to get in more trouble. The father listened carefully, each word cutting deep into his heart. He felt anger, sadness, and disappointment all at once, but he also felt proud of his son for finally sharing the truth. That night, the father could not sleep. He kept thinking about how unfairly his child had been treated. He walked around the small house, his mind racing with questions. Why would a teacher do this? How long has my boy been suffering like this? He looked at the little lunchbox resting on the kitchen counter and felt a heavy determination building in his heart. The father decided that things could not continue this way. His son's health, happiness, and dignity mattered more than anything. He silently promised himself that he would find a way to end this injustice. But instead of rushing with anger, he chose patience. He knew he had to be careful. If he wanted to protect his son, he needed a plan, a smart one that would show the truth without hurting the boy. The boy, unaware of what his father was planning, went to bed that night feeling a little lighter. For the first time, he did not feel completely alone. He knew his father now understood, and somehow that gave him comfort. Little did he know, his father was already preparing to take the first step toward changing everything. The next morning, the boy's father woke up early. He sat at the kitchen table with his cup of tea, staring at the empty lunchbox. The memories of what his son told him the night before kept repeating in his head. He felt a storm inside his heart. On one side, there was anger at the teacher who dared to take away food from a child. On the other side, there was sadness for his boy who had been suffering quietly without saying a word. And along with these feelings came determination. The father promised himself that he would not let this continue any longer. When his son entered the kitchen, he looked at him with concern. The boy avoided eye contact, perhaps afraid that his father was upset with him. But instead, the father gently smiled and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry," he said softly. "You did the right thing by telling me. Now leave the rest to me." Those words gave the boy comfort, though he still felt nervous about what might happen. That day, the father packed lunch for his son as usual, but this time his mind was restless. He was already thinking of ways to protect his child. He watched his boy leave for school with a heavy heart. The father knew he needed to be wise. Running straight to the school and shouting at the teacher would only embarrass his son, and might even cause more trouble. No, he thought, there had to be a better way. The father spent the day working, but his thoughts never left the classroom where his son sat. He imagined his boy sitting hungry, staring at the blackboard, while the teacher enjoyed the food meant for him. Each thought pierced his heart. By the evening, he was more certain than ever. He must act. When the boy returned from school that afternoon, the father carefully studied him. Again, the boy rushed to the food on the table, eating with unusual hunger. The father asked softly, "Did you get to eat your lunch today?" The boy shook his head quietly. The teacher had taken it again. The father clenched his fists under the table, but he forced himself to remain calm. He didn't want his son to see his anger. Instead, he simply nodded, his mind now working faster than ever. That night after dinner, the father called his son to sit beside him. The boy looked uncertain, but the father's kind eyes gave him courage. "My dear," he began, "I know it's hard for you. But listen to me carefully, this is not your fault. You did nothing wrong. A teacher should guide you, not take away your food. You must never think you are weak for staying quiet. Sometimes silence is not weakness, it just means you are patient. But now it is my turn to speak for you." The boy listened carefully, and for the first time a small smile appeared on his lips. He felt safe. He knew his father was planning something. The father then asked, "Do you trust me?" The boy nodded quickly. "Good," the father replied, "because tomorrow I will take care of this. All you need to do is carry your lunch as usual." The boy was curious. "What will you do, Papa?" he asked softly. But the father only smiled and said, "You'll see." That night, when the boy went to bed, the father remained awake for a long time. He walked back and forth in the small room, thinking carefully. He did not want to simply confront the teacher. He wanted to make sure the truth came out. He wanted everyone to know how unfairly his son was being treated. But he also wanted to do it in a way that would not harm his boy's education. Finally, an idea began to take shape in his mind. A clever plan, something simple but strong. He whispered to himself, "Yes, this will work." Then he sat down with a pen and paper and began to write something with great care. His hand moved slowly, and his words carried both his love for his son and his anger toward the injustice. When he finished, he folded the paper neatly and placed it aside. Then he opened the lunchbox and carefully prepared for the next day. Meanwhile, the boy slept peacefully, not knowing what his father was preparing. For weeks he had felt helpless, but tonight he felt a strange sense of hope. He knew his father was a man of action, and if he said he would take care of it, he surely would. The next morning, the boy noticed something different. His father packed the lunchbox with more attention than usual. He placed the regular sandwich inside, then added something else. The boy tilted his head curiously, but the father only smiled and closed the box firmly. He handed it to his son and said, "Be brave. Today is the day things begin to change." As the boy walked to school, he felt both nervous and excited. He wondered what his father had done, but he trusted him completely. The father, meanwhile, spent the whole day restless. He wanted to know what would happen when the teacher opened the lunchbox. He imagined the shock, the reaction, and the truth finally coming to light. He could hardly wait for his son to return and tell him everything. In class, the boy sat quietly as usual. His teacher taught the lessons with the same stern face. But the boy's mind was not on the blackboard. He was thinking about his lunchbox sitting in his bag. When break time came, his heart began to beat faster. He knew what usually happened. The teacher walked around as always, eyes scanning the room, and soon spotted the boy's lunch. The boy looked down, waiting. The teacher gave a small smirk and said, "I'll take this." "You don't need it." The boy handed it over, but this time he felt different. There was no sadness in his eyes. Deep inside, he knew something was about to change. Back at home, the father waited near the door when the school day ended. He saw his son walking back, and he quickly noticed the difference. There was a light in his boy's eyes that had been missing for weeks. The boy ran into the house, dropped his bag, and said breathlessly, "Papa, something happened today." The father smiled gently and sat him down. "Tell me everything," he said. The boy began to describe what took place when the teacher opened the lunchbox. His voice trembled with excitement. The father listened carefully, nodding slowly, knowing that the first part of his plan had worked exactly as he hoped. That night, as the boy ate dinner with more happiness than before, the father silently thought about the next steps. This was only the beginning. The teacher had been exposed, but more still needed to be done. Tomorrow would bring the moment of truth, and the father was ready. The father did not sleep much that night. He kept pacing between the small kitchen and the living room, stopping often beside the table where the lunchbox sat like a quiet witness. He remembered each sentence his son had said, the pauses between those sentences, the way the boy's voice grew smaller when he spoke about being hungry. The father's heart felt heavy, but his mind stayed clear. He told himself again and again that he must protect his child with care, not anger. If he moved in anger, he might frighten his son or make things worse at school. If he moved with wisdom, he could end the unfairness and also teach a lesson about respect and kindness. He opened the lunchbox and studied it as if it were a small problem he could solve with patience. It was clean, sturdy, and plain, no fancy design, only a neat snap-lock lid. He tried the lid a few times, listening to the click. An idea came to him, simple but strong. He would make the lunchbox speak for the boy in the calmest way, and he would make it leave a record of what really happened. Not loud, not cruel, just clear. He took out a little notepad and wrote a plan with short steps. Step 1. Prepare a normal, healthy lunch for the boy exactly like every other day, because the goal was not to change the routine, but to reveal the truth. Step 2. Place a clear, polite note inside the lunchbox on top of the food, visible the moment the lid was opened. Step 3. Add a second layer under the first with a surprise that was harmless but impossible to ignore. Step 4. Give the boy a quiet backup snack in a different pocket so he would not go hungry no matter what happened that day. Step 5. Guide the boy on how to stay calm. Tell him that none of this was his fault, and promise him that the adults would handle the adult problem. Before dawn, he went to a small stationery shop that opened early. He asked the shopkeeper for a recordable greeting card, the kind that plays a message when it opens. The shopkeeper showed him a few simple ones. The father did not pick anything bright or silly. He chose a plain white one. Back home, he tested it carefully. He pressed the tiny button, spoke in a low, gentle voice, and recorded, "This lunch belongs to the boy's name." If you are an adult opening this, please close it and return it to him. If there is any issue, contact the school office. Thank you, he played it back. The sound was calm, not angry. It did not accuse. It requested respect. Next, he wrote a short letter and slipped it into a transparent sleeve so it could be read easily. He kept the language simple and polite. Dear teacher, this lunch was prepared for my child. He needs this food to focus and learn. If there is any rule about meals, please send it to me in writing through the office. Until then, I kindly ask that you do not remove his lunch. I am happy to meet and discuss a better plan. Thank you for your care. He signed it with his full name and number, not to threaten anyone, but to stand openly. Then he prepared labels, small strips of paper and clear tape. On each item he wrote, packed by father for boy's name, property of the student. He did not do this to embarrass the teacher. He did it to make the truth easy to see. He also added a simple seal. He cut a narrow strip of paper, wrote the date, and placed it across the lunchbox lid with a small piece of tape. Nothing strong, just enough that the strip would tear when the box opened. He told himself this was not a trap. It was a mirror. Whoever opened the box would see themselves clearly, either a caring adult returning it or someone crossing a line. When the food cooled, he packed a normal meal, a sandwich the boy liked, a small fruit, and a bottle of water with the boy's name written neatly. He arranged the items carefully. The letter went at the top, the card just beneath the lid so it would open and speak at once, and the food below. Then he took a small cloth pouch from the drawer and packed a second sandwich and a small banana. He slid this pouch into a different section of the backpack under a notebook and zipped it quietly. He sat at the table and breathed slowly. He did not want to turn the school into a battlefield or the classroom into a stage. He wanted the room to become a place where the right thing was obvious. He imagined the moment, the lid opening, the soft voice from the card playing the message, the letter lying there, the labels stating whose food it was. He imagined, too, the possibility that nothing dramatic would happen, that the bell for mid-morning break rang, and the classroom changed at once. Chairs scraped softly, pencil cases clicked shut, and a gentle wave of chatter moved through the room like wind across grass. The boy stayed in his seat for a moment, his hands folded on the desk. His backpack rested by his feet, the familiar weight of the lunchbox inside. He could feel his heart beating, not fast with fear as before, but steady with hope. He remembered his father's words from the morning. Be calm, be brave, let the truth speak for itself. The teacher stood near the board, watching the students as they reached for their snacks. The teacher's routine never changed. A slow walk along the rows, a quick scan for small mistakes, a raised eyebrow here, a small sigh there. When the teacher's eyes landed on the boy, they paused. The backpack was exactly where the boy always kept it. The teacher knew this pattern as well as the boy did. Break time, the teacher said almost pleasantly. No mess, no noise. The boy reached down and carefully lifted his backpack onto his lap. He unzipped it just enough to slip a hand inside and touch the smooth lid of the lunchbox. He did not pull it out, he waited. The class was calmer than usual. A few students were already eating quietly, but many watched from the corners of their eyes. The story of the lunch had traveled between desks in tiny whispers for weeks. Some students hoped today would be different. Some were too used to the pattern to expect change. The teacher began to walk, 1, 2, 3 rows. The footsteps were not loud, but in the boy's ears they sounded like a drumbeat. When the teacher reached his desk, the boy looked down as he always did. His fingers rested on the zipper. He neither hid the lunch nor offered it. He simply waited. Hand it over, the teacher said, voice low but clear. The boy lifted the lunchbox from the bag and placed it on the desk with both hands, gently, as if he were placing something fragile. A thin paper seal lay across the lid with the date written on it in neat letters. Small labels were visible through the clear plastic of the lid. Packed by father for boy's name, property of the student. The teacher's eyes narrowed slightly, then relaxed. The teacher's hand moved to the lid as if to test it. Rules are rules, the teacher murmured, though no rule had been spoken aloud. The boy said nothing. He did not need to say anything. The lunchbox would speak. The teacher lifted the lid. The thin paper strip tore with a soft whisper. In the same second, a small sound rose from inside, calm, gentle, and unmistakable. This lunch belongs to the boy's name. If you are an adult opening this, please close it and return it to him. If there is any issue, contact the school office. Thank you. The room froze. The little voice from the card was not angry. It was polite, even warm, yet it filled the space more strongly than any shout could have. It was the sound of a parent's steady care, steady enough to be heard by everyone. The teacher's hand stopped. For a heartbeat, the teacher looked like someone who had opened the wrong door and found a mirror behind it. The message played again when the lid moved slightly. This lunch belongs to the boy's name. A few students gasped, then fell silent, eyes wide. The boy kept his head down, but inside his chest something lifted, like a bird given room to fly. Beneath the card lay a letter in a clear sleeve. The first lines were visible at once. Dear teacher, this lunch was prepared for my child. The teacher's fingers hovered above it, then drew back as if the words themselves were hot to the touch. For a long few seconds, no one moved. The classroom clock ticked gently on the wall, marking ordinary time in an extraordinary moment. A quiet sound came from the doorway. The assistant teacher, who helped in nearby classes and often passed by, had paused with an armful of books. She had heard the little recorded voice and now stood still, her eyes moving from the boy to the lunchbox to the teacher. 2 students near the window had also heard the message and turned their heads. The rip in the paper seal lay like a thin line across the lid, telling its own story. This box had been opened by someone other than the child. The teacher cleared the throat softly and shut the lid. But too late, the room had already seen and heard. The card's message did not accuse. It simply asked for respect. The labels did not shout. They simply named the owner. The letter did not attack. It invited a proper conversation through the office. All of that together was stronger than any argument. Return to your work, the teacher said, voice steady but thinner than before. Eat quickly. We have a lesson coming. The teacher set the lunchbox on the boy's desk without meeting his eyes. The boy looked at the lid, then at the neat line of tape that had been torn. He placed his hands on the box and left it closed. He didn't feel the need to rush. He understood that the moment was larger than his hunger. In the row behind him, a classmate leaned forward and whispered, "Are you okay?" The boy nodded. He felt more than okay. He felt seen, not just by friends, but by the truth itself. The assistant teacher stepped into the room as if only now remembering her books. "Excuse me," she said kindly, "I heard a message. Is everything all right?" "We're fine," the teacher answered quickly. "Just a misunderstanding." The assistant teacher's eyes softened. She did not challenge or press. She only said, "If you need help, the office is open." Then she glanced at the boy for a fraction of a second, a small human glance that said, "You matter." She left the room as quietly as she had come. The classroom grew busy again. The children opened their lunches. The boy finally lifted the lid. The card stayed still. The letter stayed in place. He slipped the letter beneath the food so it would not attract more attention. He took a slow bite of his sandwich. It tasted like kindness. It tasted like home. But the moment was not over. At the front of the room, the teacher stood with hands on the desk, not touching any papers. It was as if the steady rhythm of the day had been pulled out from under their feet. The teacher had relied on routine, on silence, on control, on an unspoken rule that no one would question small wrongs. But the little voice from the lunchbox had broken that routine with simple words, "Please return it to him." 10 minutes later, the teacher asked the class to line up for the library period. The line formed neat and quiet. The boy took his place, holding the lunchbox in both hands. As they stepped into the hall, the assistant teacher passed again and smiled faintly. The boy looked down at the box. The paper seal lay in 2 pieces now, tucked under the lid. It felt like proof he did not need to show to anyone. It existed for those who had eyes to see. In the library, the class settled with storybooks. The librarian, a gentle person with bright eyes, noticed the boy's lunchbox on his desk even though it was not a usual place for food. She came over and whispered, "Lunch in the library?" The boy started to close it, but she shook her head softly. "It's all right. I only wanted to say your name is written very neatly. Your father must care a lot." The boy gave a small smile and felt his throat tighten with a strange, happy ache. He managed to say, "Yes, he does." After the library period, the students returned to the classroom. A short while later, a message arrived from the office. A student runner handed a slip to the teacher. The teacher looked at it, then looked up. "I will step out for a moment," the teacher said. "Quiet reading." When the door closed, the room exhaled. A handful of children turned toward the boy at once, but he raised a hand gently, and they respected his wish. No one wanted to turn kindness into noise. In the office, the principal had the assistant teacher's brief note on the desk. Heard a recorded message in teacher's class. Might be a parent's request regarding a student's lunch. You may want to check quietly. The principal was not interested in drama. The principal was interested in fairness. So the principal asked simple questions, the kind that shine light on complicated corners. Was there a rule? Was the rule written and shared with families? Was the child warned? Was there any reason to take food away from a student? From the classroom window, the boy could not see the office conversation, but he felt its shape, the way a person feels the shape of a mountain behind clouds. He kept reading the same page and not taking in the words. He thought of his father's careful hands placing the note, the card, the labels, the small strip of paper with the date. He thought of his father's voice, calm, asking for respect, not revenge. When the teacher returned, the face was composed, but something had changed, like a lamp turned a little lower. The teacher stood in front of the class with a measured breath. "Students," the teacher said, "I want to make something clear. There has been confusion about food during break. From now on, you may eat the lunches packed for you quietly at your desks unless the school shares a different instruction." A quiet thrill moved through the room, but no one cheered. They simply understood. The boy lowered his eyes to hide the shine in them. "Also," the teacher added, looking directly at him for the first time that day, "if anyone believes they have been treated unfairly, they can speak to the office or to me after class. Respect goes both ways," the words were. The next morning began with a different kind of quiet in the boy's home. It was not the heavy quiet of worry. It was the gentle quiet of careful preparation. The father stood at the kitchen counter with the lunchbox open, placing food inside as he always did, a sandwich, some slices of fruit, a small homemade treat wrapped in paper, and a bottle of water with the boy's name written neatly on it. He did not add any special devices today. No card, no seal. The message had already been sent and the truth had already been seen. Now it was time to bring everything into the open with calm, grown-up voices. Before closing the lid, the father placed one more thing on top, a folded copy of the letter he had written. It was the same letter the teacher had already seen, but he tucked in a short new note for the office. "Happy to meet today if useful." He closed the lunchbox and set it beside the backpack. When the boy entered the kitchen, the father smiled and rested a hand on his shoulder. "Today," the father said softly, "we speak together. You do not have to carry this alone anymore." The boy nodded. He felt stronger than before, like a small tree that had survived strong wind and now stood straighter. He ate a simple breakfast, washed his hands, and picked up his backpack. At the door, the father knelt to the boy's height, looking into his eyes. "Remember," he said, "you did nothing wrong. If anyone asks you what happened, tell the truth in simple words. If someone wants more detail, they can speak to me. This is an adult problem, so the adults will solve it." The boy took a breath and nodded again. They walked to school side by side, the father's steps steady and sure. The street felt brighter than usual, as if the morning understood that something good was about to be put right. At the school gate, the principal stood greeting students. The principal noticed the father and the boy walking together and gave a polite nod. "Good morning," the principal said. "Good morning," the father replied. He did not explain anything there. This was not the place for a long talk. But the principal added, "If you have a moment later, please stop by the office. I would like to make sure everything is in order." The father agreed, and the boy felt a lightness in his chest. It was a relief to know the grown-ups were already moving. In class, the atmosphere was calmer than the day before. The teacher entered on time and arranged the chalk, the attendance book, and a stack of papers with extra care. There was a new gentleness in the teacher's movements, not dramatic, but visible to anyone who was paying attention. The children sensed it too. They sat a little straighter, opened their books a little more quietly, and waited. Before the first lesson began, the teacher spoke in an even voice. "Students, I want to begin with a reminder. Food during break is allowed, unless the school shares a different instruction. Please keep your desks neat and your voices soft. Respect for your friends includes respect for their meals." The teacher's eyes rested on the boy for the briefest moment, then moved on. No extra comment. No sharp tone. The small change felt like a door unlocking somewhere inside the room. When the break bell rang, the boy did something he had not done in many days. He took out his lunch without fear. He placed it on the desk and opened the lid himself. There was no paper seal, only the soft smell of fresh bread and fruit. He ate slowly, tasting every bite. A friend in the next row leaned over and whispered, "How is it?" The boy smiled. "It tastes like home." The friend smiled back. That was all. No big scene, just a small good moment that felt like sunshine. Shortly after the break, a student helper brought a polite note to the classroom. It asked the boy to come to the office with his teacher when convenient. The teacher read the note, nodded, and looked up. "We will step out for a few minutes," the teacher said to the class. "Please continue your reading." In the office, the principal sat at a round table with 2 chairs on one side and one on the other. A counselor, an observant, calm person, sat nearby with a notepad. The father was already there, hands folded, posture steady, expression gentle but firm. He stood when the boy entered, and the boy went to sit beside him. "Thank you all for coming," the principal began. "I invited our counselor as a witness and to help us make a clear plan. We are here to understand what happened and to make sure it does not happen again." No one spoke for a second. The room felt balanced, like a scale waiting for careful weights. The principal looked at the boy with kind eyes. "Would you like to say anything?" the principal asked. "Or would you like your father to speak first?" The boy glanced at his father, and the father gave him an encouraging nod. The boy took a breath. "My lunch was taken," he said softly. "Many days. I was hungry in class. I did not tell because I was scared." He stopped. His voice did not shake. He had told the truth, simple and clear. "Thank you," the principal said. That was brave and helpful. The principal turned to the teacher. The teacher's shoulders were tense, but the eyes were steady now. "Do you want to share your side?" the principal asked. The teacher drew in a breath. "I made a mistake," the teacher said. "I thought I was following a standard about food in class. But there was no written rule. I believed keeping desks clear would help with order. I did not consider the student's need or how it would feel to lose a meal. I also did not ask the office for guidance." The teacher lowered their voice. "I am sorry." The father listened, his hands still folded. When the teacher finished, the father spoke in a calm tone. "Thank you for your apology. I understand that classrooms are busy and that keeping order is not easy. But a child's food is not a small thing. It is his energy and comfort. If there is a rule, it should be shared in writing. If there is a concern, a parent should be informed. Please do not put my son in a situation where he must choose between respect for his teacher and his basic need to eat." The counselor nodded and added, "We can help with that. It sounds like we need a clear written policy." The principal took out a printed sheet. "I drafted something this morning," the principal said. "It states students may eat the lunches packed for them during break times at their desks. If a teacher has any concern about food, they must contact the office first. No adult may remove a student's meal without office approval. I will share this with all staff and families today." The father read the lines, then looked at the teacher. "This would be enough for me," he said softly. "But I also want something else, something for my son. I want him to feel safe seeing you at the front of the room. I want him to know that your classroom is a place where his voice matters." The teacher looked at the boy. "I understand," the teacher said. "I will make that clear to him today." The principal smiled just a little. "Good, then let us agree on the steps. First, a formal written policy goes out today. Second, the teacher will speak with the class about respect for each other's meals and belongings. Third, the counselor will check in with the boy this week to make sure he feels comfortable. Fourth, if any issue comes up in the future, we will loop in parents quickly." Everyone agreed. The plan was plain and strong, like a bridge you could trust even in rain. Before they left, the teacher turned to the boy. "May I say something to you directly?" The boy nodded. "I am sorry for taking your lunch," the teacher said. "I should have asked for guidance. I should have protected your learning, not made it harder. I will do better. If anything worries you in the future, please tell me or the office. You deserve respect." The boy looked at the teacher's face. He saw no anger there, only a serious promise. "Thank you," he said. Back in the classroom, the teacher carried out the plan. The students settled as the teacher spoke in a clear voice. "We are making a change today. The school has shared a written policy. Your lunches are yours during break. Keep your desks neat and your voices soft. If there is ever confusion, the office will help. If you feel something is unfair, you can speak to me or the office. Respect must be real, not just a word. No one clapped. They did not need to. The words were not a performance. They were a path. The students understood and returned to their work with a quiet sense of relief. The room felt more open, as if a window had been unlatched. For the boy, the rest of the day moved in a new rhythm. In math, he raised his hand to answer a question and got it right. In reading, he followed the story easily, his mind steady and awake. In art, he drew a small scene of a table with a lunchbox on it and a window beside it showing a piece of sky. The art teacher walked past and smiled. "That's peaceful," the teacher said. The boy smiled back. It was peaceful. After school, the father waited near the gate. When he saw his son, he noticed the difference at once. The boy's steps were springy, his shoulders light. He ran the last few feet and hugged his father around the waist in the open, without fear or worry. "How was it?" the father asked. "Good," the boy said simply. "We had a meeting." The teacher said sorry. The principal made a rule. "The counselor will check on me. It's all written." He paused, then added with a small grin, "And my lunch was perfect." They began to walk home. On the way, the boy told tiny details that mattered only to him. The way the classroom felt when the policy was read aloud. The way a friend offered him a piece of fruit even though he already had his own. The way the teacher's voice sounded different. Not softer exactly, but steadier and kinder. The father listened to each detail as if it were a jewel.